Hello, thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Erin Wallace. I am the lead outreach specialist for the Stay Well grant program, and I'll be with you for the duration of this presentation today in elevating the education community, really talking about information and resources that are available for educators and support school staff throughout COVID-19. As mentioned, this initiative is funded by FEMA and is a grant through FEMA. It's additional support by SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Administration, and it's to provide counseling support to Michiganders during the COVID-19 crisis. This program is managed by the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. So today, just to give you an overview of what we'll be going through and what we'll be talking about is some basic COVID-19 information. This may be a repeat for you, but for those that may not have heard it, it's always a good opportunity to share. We'll talk about what this Stay Well program is, how this pertains specifically to you as educators and support staff, and then encourage you to have a discussion about this afterwards. So as we know, people with COVID-19 can really have a wide range of symptoms. These can be reported anywhere from being very mild to severe illness. We know that symptoms typically appear 2 to 14 days after exposure to the virus. For older adults, their symptoms may be different than those of younger populations, but we know that COVID-19 is typically signaled by 3 symptoms, which is a fever, an incessant cough, and as well as shortness of breath. On the slide here, there are some additional ways that you can protect yourself and others from coming in contact with the virus. We want to talk a little bit about the benefits of the vaccine. So as the vaccine is rolling out here in the US, we understand that some people may be concerned about getting vaccinated. While there are more vaccines that are quickly being developed, really just as quickly as possible, it's important to know that routine processes and procedures remain in place to ensure the safety of any vaccine that's authorized or approved for use. Safety is a top priority, and there's many great reasons to get vaccinated. Here on the slide, there are just a few of those reasons. So we know that the vaccine, its goal is to help prevent you from getting COVID-19 if you were to come in contact with it. The vaccine is a safer way to build immunity. So there's a lot of research that's happening right now revolving around natural immunity. And we know that you will have some of that if you have had COVID-19, but what we don't know is how long that natural immunity will last for. So a vaccination is a safer way to help build that immunity within your system. And we need the vaccine because it's going to be a very important tool in helping to stop this pandemic and really helping us be able to move forward. So you may have questions about when and where you can get the vaccine. So Michigan is following the Center for Disease Control and Prevention recommendations for the distribution of the vaccine. This rollout continues to undergo modifications and adjustments. So for really the most up-to-date information, we're encouraging you to go to www.michigan.gov/COVID vaccine. If you're not able to use the internet to find this, or you're working with someone who their internet access is not as stable, you can always call the COVID-19 hotline, which is 1-888-535-6136, and you'd be prompted to select number 5 to find out more information about rollout in your local community. Some additional vaccine facts. So we know that vaccines typically take many, many years to develop. However, I think it's important to know that scientists had already begun research for coronavirus vaccines during previous outbreaks caused by related coronaviruses. So SARS, if you remember, or the Middle East respiratory syndrome. And that earlier research really provided a great head start for rapid development of vaccines to protect against infection with COVID-19. No steps were skipped in the development of this vaccine, but really modifications to the processes were made to shorten the timeline without sacrificing any safety at all. Some additional vaccine facts are listed here on the screen. So the COVID-19 vaccine will not give you COVID-19. There is not a live virus contained within the vaccine. The vaccines won't cause you to test positive on COVID-19 viral tests. Those viral tests are looking for a present infection, not a previous infection, or if you have immunity to the virus. People who've gotten sick with COVID-19 are still encouraged to receive the vaccine. Again, this goes back to the research that's happening revolving around natural immunity and how long it lasts for individuals. And lastly, the vaccine is free of charge for individuals. The Stay Well Grant Program uses federal disaster funds to provide mental health support services to Michigan residents who are understandably struggling to cope with the emotional distress from the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. We really are using a two-pronged approach. So the first approach is to give all Michigan residents access to mental health resources through the COVID-19 information hotline and being transferred to a counselor through that. These services are all free and encouraged to be used by anyone that may be feeling more anxiety or distress related to the pandemic. The second approach was that we really wanted to look at different populations because we know that their anxiety and distress may be different. So educators, support staff, you're just one of those populations that we have addressed. The other targeted populations are listed here on our screen, as well as the goals of the outreach and what we're hoping to achieve with this program. Bottom line is that we want to encourage you and everyone to be kind to their mind. Additional ways that we're helping is not only by encouraging people to call the Stay Well line, but also to utilize psychoeducational materials that we've developed and that are posted to our webpage, encouraging people to share the information about this free resource, or encouraging folks to join the support groups that we have that are happening and taking place pretty much every day of the week right now. Whether you're in need of support yourself, you know of parents that would benefit from connecting with other parents in Michigan, those that are struggling with substance use and recovery. We just encourage anyone and everyone that is experiencing any form of anxiety or distress related to the pandemic to utilize these services that we have. We know that health is not defined only as your physical well-being, but health and wellness is truly multidimensional, and it includes physical, emotional, intellectual, spiritual, environmental, social, and occupational. Each one of these dimensions are a part of your quality of life, and if one area is neglected for a period of time, you may see an overall negative effect to your health. Today, we're not going to focus on all 7 of these dimensions of health, but we will focus on 3 of them, the emotional, occupational, and social aspects of health. Dr. Peinels, who's the medical director for behavioral health, shared this quote: emerging or lingering anxiety, distress, irritability, and loss of hope are important feelings to recognize in ourselves and others, and it can help to talk to someone. If it's helpful, the counselors can also provide callers with referrals to local mental health agencies and substance use disorder support services. All of us have been and are being impacted because of COVID-19. This virus does not discriminate. However, there are some groups that are and will experience more hardships than others. And it's truly imperative that all Michiganders know that they're not alone. There are resources to help to assist in normalizing these feelings because they're shared and at some point in time by all Michiganders. We know that this virus isn't going anywhere anytime soon, and in the duration while we wait, it's truly imperative to have resources available to help individuals cope. So we want you to know that you're not alone, that there are resources in the community through the Stay Well program that are really dedicated to helping you process and overcome these feelings of distress and that lingering anxiety. So let's talk a little bit more about feelings. If you're comfortable, think out loud or share with someone else some of these feelings that you may have felt in the last 60 days. We know that many educators and support staff have reported feeling the above mentioned emotions after being driven by a pandemic to the front lines of an unprecedented rush to then distance learning. The nation's schools continue to scramble to manage an armful of new challenges as schools prepare to return to in-person learning or continue to offer both solutions. This year's been tough, and teachers and support staff are exhausted. Hybrid learning can really be just the best of both worlds or the worst of both worlds reality. I love the image that's here on the screen. I feel like it's really quite reflective of myself personally. But you know, you're pulled in so many different directions. So when you're looking at best case scenarios, everyone's safe while being provided valuable in-person instruction that's giving them the tools to do meaningful schoolwork at home. At worst, teachers are forced to cut corners on instruction. Schools struggle to transition students seamlessly from in-person to remote and vice versa. And students who are learning at home are getting left behind compared to students who choose to spend time in person. This really barely even covers all of the additional supports that children receive when attending school in person, and that's really regardless of age. It's also no secret that you often bring home piles of work and spend your weekend hours answering emails or grading papers. Now there's a need to tailor your lesson plans to be delivered remotely, make sure that you're meeting your students' emotional needs during an anxiety-inducing time, and manage your own children's learning if you have them at home, as well as combating Zoom fatigue, which is a real thing. There's really no barrier between the classroom and the living room anymore, and teachers are finding themselves troubleshooting technology and answering messages from parents and students alike, really at all hours. So why is it so hard to focus sometimes? It really just seems like ages since we've started referring to life in these uncertain times. For months now, our routines have been disrupted and we've been forced to adapt. Anecdotally, one major consequence is a state of mental fatigue, and it feels hard to concentrate for any real length of time as if we're in this collective state of near constant distraction. Well, there's a reason for this. It's actually a psychological theory that was originally applied in the context of learning that might help explain why living in the age of COVID-19 can have turned our minds to soup. It's called the cognitive load theory, or CLT, and it was first developed by the Australian educational psychologist John Sweller. So really simply put, cognitive load theory characterizes our minds as information processing systems. When we're working on a problem, especially an unfamiliar one, we depend on our working memory, which is very limited both in its capacity and the length of time it holds information. You typically hold no more than 5 items in your working memory at one time. And the less familiar you are with the task, the more you depend on your working memory to help juggle the relevant information. In contrast, when you're an expert, most of what you need to know is stored in your long-term memory and you just complete these items on autopilot. With new tasks, there's new stress levels. So trying to understand the different ways the pandemic can be playing havoc on your mental function is first that it's forcing you into new routines. It's robbed you of the ability to do things on auto. If you're teaching remotely, no longer can you just go into the classroom and start your day. It's ensuring that you have everything set up, prepared, and ready to go. These adaptations force you out of that autopilot and really draw on that limited working memory capacity. In the jargon of CLT, this intrinsic cognitive load of much of what you have to do is increased. So you're spending more of your time having to think deliberately and consciously, more like a novice than an expert, which is just exhausting in itself. Secondly, research based in cognitive load theory has shown how our emotions can interfere with information processing. So when you're anxious, for example, this is known to reduce working memory capacity, making it more difficult to work through any mental problem that really requires conscious problem solving. So think of your students also during this time who have also been forced to adapt, and they are also forced out of that autopilot of just coming to school and being able to engage and enjoy. They're now having to think in different ways as well. What's happening now is that the disruptions to life caused by the pandemic are forcing you to draw on your limited working memory capacity more often at a time when, if you're more stressed, your anxiety levels are raised, or you're juggling multiple tasks and commitments, you have a diminished working memory capacity. It's really the worst of both worlds, and another reason why you're feeling mentally drained. Ordinarily, in a time of upheaval, we just can kind of quickly adapt and adjust, and the cognitive load becomes more manageable. Again, what's striking about life in the era of COVID-19 is that the situation keeps changing. Governments are changing and constantly rolling out new, more complex restriction, travel rules, self-isolation, quarantine instructions, symptom watch lists, new smartphone apps, questioning, are the families completing the daily survey in Power School? Really, a day goes by that there isn't a new development for us to register and respond to. We know that with uncertainty, it always increases the cognitive load. Stressors such as health threats, fear of unemployment, fear of market disruptions really all cause cognitive load. Furthermore, the working remote policies that were introduced globally really required people to adapt to new technologies and a new way of working just all together in itself. The cognitive load theory for me was just very validating and helping me to understand that, no, I'm not losing it, that there is a reason behind this. But what do we do with those feelings now? How do we manage those challenges that we're experiencing? First and foremost, we want you to have self-compassion. Be aware of your distress and acknowledge how tough your situation is. Then remind yourself that you're not alone in feeling this way, that there are many others who are going through the same emotions that you are. Get up, stand up, move your body. Sitting in front of a laptop all day is definitely going to take a toll on your mental health. We hear this all the time, but moving your body and exercising can really have a profound impact on your overall well-being. Instead of denying your stress or just keeping it to yourself, talk about it. Tell your family members, friends, talk to peers, express what you're feeling. Just being able to say it out loud is a great way to work toward a happier mindset. People's stress levels are higher when they're working or when they're competing, I guess you would say, against each other rather than working together. When you feel like no one understands how you feel, remember that in the most fundamental sense, it is us against the pandemic. Your feelings are in some ways unique, but in other ways very much so universal. And supporting each other is the foundation of resilience. If you feel like you don't have the support system or a support system, know that you're not alone. There is a stable counselor that is ready to listen and ready to talk whenever you are. We wanted to talk about some of the known common work-related factors that can add to stress during a pandemic. So first and foremost, concern about risk of virus exposure at work or bringing the virus to work. Trying to juggle work while juggling personal and family needs. If you're teaching from home, but you also have children that are also remote learning and trying to manage and help all of that, that is extremely stressful. Challenges with the tools and technology needed to perform your job. I think we've all had an experience where our Wi-Fi has gone out and there's a big meeting or there's something else that's happening, and that just adds to the challenge and adds to the stress that you're experiencing. Feelings that you're not contributing enough to work or guilt about not being on the front line, feeling as though you're failing your students because you're not doing as much as you'd like to for them. uncertainty about the future of your workplace and or employment. Teachers really have a high level of stress job pre-pandemic. Adding in all of these other factors and some additional ones that we'll talk about here shortly certainly can add to that. And then lastly, working irregular and longer hours. Again, there isn't that set time of this is when I'm working and this is when I'm not, especially when you're working from home. So let's talk about burnout. In many different fields, employees can suffer from burnout. This is nothing new. We know that burnout is a state of complete and utter exhaustion due to the work that's been undertaken. For teachers, a recent study from the Drug Education Journal found that 66% of teachers want to leave their jobs, and 41.3% of new teachers leave the profession within the first 5 years. Teachers also suffer from higher than average rates of drug and alcohol use. And at any given point in time, 36.4% of teachers are likely to quit. So what's contributing to that? Stress, definitely stress. And what isn't stressful about school right now? Remote, in-person, hybrid, transition, really that ever revolving door of changing rules and regulations based on new information related to COVID-19 protocol. It's all adding to it. Feelings of lack of support, whether that be induced from parents not helping as much as you would like them to, or helping with homeschooling, your district, your own personal support system, you can just feel as though there's a lack of support, lack of job fulfillment. Burnout happens when teachers that they typically get into this role or into the profession with dreams of making the world a better place and helping others. But when burnout starts to really take place is when they start to feel exhausted, defeated, overwhelmed, sometimes even apathetic. When you aren't able to see, touch, and feel as though you're making a difference, you may not want to put as much effort into the work. And that's not a choice that you're making consciously, but the result is from increasing burnouts. The feelings of not being able to do enough for people. Teachers are connecting individuals to services, whether it's families that are in need of additional services or students. And when you're not in person, there is that lack of rapport that you're really able to build with individuals, and not feeling as though you're able to do as much for those individuals is hard. There's also emotional exhaustion. So we know that burnout is composed of emotional exhaustion, which is a person's loss of emotional resources and emotional coping energy. We're here to help you through this by helping you to pause and to care for your mental health. Many people struggle with mental health. However, this pandemic is definitely amplifying these symptoms, especially on those that have been working in a taxing environment for an extended period of time. It's so important that you recognize and acknowledge these feelings and talk to someone. A stable counselor, again, is ready to listen and wanting to help and work with you. Just a list of some burnout signs, symptoms, and triggers. I'd like for you to just review this list and then think honestly, have you seen this within yourself in the last 2 weeks? Any of these signs, symptoms, or experienced the triggers? In addition, have you noticed this in any of your peers? If you have, consider speaking to someone. Again, the Stay Well line is completely confidential, so there's no record of when you're calling or how often you're calling even. Just know that that resource is available for you, especially if you're starting to notice and identify with these signs, symptoms, and triggers. So how do we thrive in our work rather than just survive? Well, the tactics employed will vary really for each person. There's 8 really kind of simple rules that can help to navigate these challenges of burnouts. So setting boundaries. It's important to work reasonable hours and commit to disengaging from work based on the commitment that you make with yourself. This will be different for everyone, but this rule is crucial. Acknowledge your limitations. You have to embrace the fact that you just can't do it all the time. You have to accept that there's only so much that you can do and that this will be enough. This acceptance will really allow you to be more present both in your work that you're doing, but also recreationally outside of work. Create a space for yourself. So take time to relax, recharge, unplug as often as possible. Learn to ask, what do I need right now? At one time, it may be solitude. At another time, it may be social support. Be active. Again, we hear this all the time, but it's important to exercise regularly, fuel our bodies with good nutrition, and allocate adequate time for sleep. These are really foundational factors for thriving regardless of anyone's profession. Find non-work outlets. Another critical aspect of sustaining and thriving is creating a life outside of work. This means engagement with hobbies, friends, loved ones, creative endeavors, and whatever your own interpretation of spirituality may be. Use your network. Turn to your coworkers and try to do a debrief with them after class. Maybe that's virtual, maybe that's in person. That's unique to you and your own district. But certainly utilizing that network, they're going to be able to understand what you're going through and being able to provide a support for one another. I encourage you to implement a mindfulness practice. There are some great free apps that you can use. Plus, Headspace is offering a free subscription for those that are living in Michigan. You can find the link to that on our webpage, which is also listed here at the bottom of the screen. And then lastly, consider speaking with someone. So to the extent that you increase self-understanding and development, you'll build resilience, and it'll also help you to relieve stress. There's a growing body of evidence that suggests that even brief mindfulness and self-compassion based skills training can significantly reduce burnout rates. If you're not comfortable or the time commitment is challenging for you, the Stay Well line is there for you to use at a time that's convenient for you. The feelings of anxiety, depression can make a person irritable. Can make a person irritable, feel sleep deprived and unmotivated. What we want Michiganders to know is that these feelings are normal in a crisis like this, and there should be no shame in seeking support to cope, function, and to feel better. This is a quote that was shared by Jody Lewis. She's our Stay Well program director through the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. Some additional ways that you can help to take care of yourself are listed here on the slide, and we'll run through them quickly. So not trying to normalize the not normal. This time has not been normal by any sense. The duration continues to go out and extend longer and longer, but this is not our normal time. Don't expect to be perfect at teaching remotely. Just don't expect to be perfect in general. Having that knowledge and get permission to give ourselves grace is essential right now. Again, forgive yourself for being less than perfect. Be intentional in your effort to keep calm and mentally centered, doing things that reduce stress, that help to keep you balanced. And then lastly, again, taking advantage of the Stay Well Counseling Hotline or the support groups that we offer. So what happens when one is engaging with others, of course, using safe practices, physical distancing, wearing a mask, there's benefit of improved mental health. When we're socially engaged, we're less likely to fall victim to mental illnesses such as depression. According to the Economic and Social Research Council, social isolation is a key trigger for mental illness. On the contrary, you're more likely to have better mental health if you have a supportive relationships with family, friends, as well as neighbors. There is benefits in safety as well. Simply by being around others, you'll be more likely to live safely. You're able to lean on your community and circle of influence for a plethora of other non-ideal situations that may arise. There's an improved sense of purpose and belonging. So depending on how we prioritize our inner circle of influence, our sense of purpose and belonging can be greatly impacted by our daily and social interactions. I like to remind people that their circle of influence can only mean everything when it comes to living life aligned with your core values. And lastly, growth and learning. So growth and learning are two things that greatly contribute to your brain health and your sense of fulfillment and they can also help contribute to your level of social interaction. So taking the opportunity to grow and learn within a community, a virtual group setting, or with a friend. Educating and caring for your students during a pandemic is stressful. For those Americans that are working full-time as educators right now, we know that your stress levels are really, really high. Without the proper support systems in place to allow for respite and the educator receiving time to care for themselves, they're at a greater risk of mental health complications than what you were pre-pandemic. For those instructors that are also accustomed to having direct contact with their students every day and being able to pick up on their behavioral cues, the worry about meeting all of those students' needs while keeping themselves safe is really harrowing. And the grief that's been witnessed firsthand by students who have lost a loved one and the trauma it presents can be daunting to educators. At Stay Well, we're here to help you through all of these different needs and emotions that you have throughout this challenging time. If you are looking for ways that you can further engage with us, there are some ideas that are shared here on the screen. We'd be happy to share social media with you so that you can share that with those that your families within your district or also with friends and family. We'd love to write a newsletter write-up for you, whether that's for your school newsletter or district newsletter. Hosting a webinar. Many school districts are using this as a return to in-person and professional development. We'd be happy to host it and tailor it specifically to your district's needs, or you can utilize this webinar here. And lastly, we have some Stay Well brochures that we would love to send to you. So if you are seeing folks in person, we have some that we would love to send you free of charge. Lastly, as a benefit for staff, many are using this service as an alternative to their EAP program. So they may not have an EAP program, but again, providing mental health resources for really all individuals is something that is front and center right now. And this is a great alternative to that because it's free of charge and it can be utilized 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. At the end, we're all in this together. This is an unprecedented crisis. It presents unprecedented risks to the rights and safety of everyone, but we are all in this together and we're going to get through it. We just really want to encourage you to be kind to your mind right now. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join and listen. If there are ways that we can be of further service, if you're interested in partnering with us in any other way, please email me. My email is listed here on the screen. It's also on our webpage. I encourage you to check out the support groups that we have that are designed specifically for educators and support staff, as well as the psychoeducational materials that we have available that may be helpful for students, families, as well as the staff in your district. Again, encouraging you all to be kind to your mind and to stay well.